Imagine opening a letter that holds years of unspoken emotions. Imagine words so raw, so vulnerable, that they cut through every layer of glamour, fame, and scripted perfection. This wasn't a letter written for the world. It was a confession written by Bailu, and it carried a weight that could shatter everything Dylan Wang thought he knew about their past. The letter was not neat. The ink looked uneven, as if every word had been pressed down with trembling hands. It was folded so many times, almost as if she had second-guessed delivering it over and over again. And when Dylan finally opened it, he wasn't ready for what came next. Inside, Bailu's voice poured out in lines that seemed almost too painful to read. She spoke of moments they once shared under the harsh lights of the camera, but also of the fleeting glimpses when the cameras were off and the world had stopped watching. Those were the moments, she admitted, she cherished most. She confessed that every smile she gave him on screen wasn't just acting, it was real. Every glance she stole when no one was watching carried emotions she could no longer contain. But the letter was not just about love, it was about regret. She admitted that fear had kept her silent. Fear of ruining his career, fear of shattering the perfect image fans had created around them, fear of losing him before she had even tried to hold on. Her silence had been her greatest mistake, and now, she was writing because she feared it was already too late. As Dylan read on, he felt the weight of every word. Bailu wrote of nights she stayed awake, replaying their last conversation, moments where she thought he had understood her silence, but instead, he had walked away. She admitted to standing outside his hotel once, holding the letter in her hands, too afraid to slip it under the door. She admitted to burning an earlier draft, watching the flames consume her truth because she thought it was better to hide than to be rejected. Her words shifted from regret to longing. She described how every project they worked on afterward felt empty, how every new co-star reminded her of what she had lost. She told him she smiled for the cameras, but cried when the lights went out. Her friends thought she was strong, but in the letter she admitted she was breaking a little more each day. And then came the part that made Dylan stop breathing for a moment. Bailu confessed that there was one thing she never told anyone, a secret she had carried alone. She wrote that she had once overheard him talking late at night, laughing with someone else, and in that moment, she realized he had already let her go. That single realization, she admitted, destroyed her more than any rumor or scandal ever could. But still, even then, she never stopped loving him. The letter closed not with a demand, not with an ultimatum, but with a question that pierced deeper than any declaration could. She asked him simply, "If I had told you earlier, would you have stayed?" Dylan folded the letter slowly, his hands trembling, his mind spinning with memories he had buried. Suddenly, the smiles, the lingering looks, the quiet silences between them, all replayed with new meaning. The truth was no longer hidden. It was here, laid bare, and it was heavier than he could bear. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just a letter. It was a confession of a love that had survived in silence, of regret that had haunted her for years, of a truth that had come too late. The world saw them as co-stars, as glamorous figures, but behind it all, Bailu had been waiting, hurting, hoping, and now confessing in the only way she knew how. And the question that haunted him most wasn't the one she asked in ink, but the one that echoed in his chest. Had he been blind to her love all along? The letter was no longer just words on paper. It had become a storm that shook Dylan from within. For years he had walked confidently in front of cameras, smiled in front of fans, and carried himself like nothing could touch him, but as he read Bailu's trembling handwriting, the world around him fell silent. Every line pierced him, not because it was filled with anger, but because it was filled with love that had been hidden for too long. Dylan sat in the quiet of his dressing room, the noise from outside muffled, the pages trembling in his hands. Bailu's words spoke of moments no one had ever known, stolen glances when the world was watching, conversations they never finished, promises they never dared to say aloud. She wrote of how she had waited for him, how she had believed one day he would come back, and how she had kept her silence because she thought her feelings would only hold him back. But what shattered Dylan the most was the line she wrote near the end. She confessed that she had always been by his side, even when she was far away, and that she wished he had seen through her silence. Dylan pressed his fingers against the words, reading them again and again, as if somehow he could change the past by holding the paper tighter. A knock on the door broke the stillness. It was Shunyu, her eyes searching his face. She had never seen Dylan look so shaken, so utterly lost. He handed her the letter without a word, his lips pressed tightly, as if saying anything would betray the storm in his chest. Shunyu read silently, her breath catching at the words. She knew Bai Lu's heart had been heavy for a long time, but she never imagined it was this heavy, this raw, this final. The air between them grew tense. Dylan paced the room, his voice finally breaking the silence. He admitted that he had always felt something he could not name, something he pushed aside because the timing was never right, because the world around them demanded they be perfect idols and not broken people with fragile hearts. But now it was too late. The news of the letter began to spread. A whisper among staff, a murmur online, a growing storm of speculation that fans could not ignore. Screenshots of the handwriting circulated like wildfire, and comments flooded in from around the world. Some fans called it beautiful, others called it tragic, but all agreed on one thing: it was too real to ignore. Meanwhile, Bai Lu herself was nowhere to be found. Rumors swirled that she had left the city, that she had gone into hiding, that she could not face Dylan after what she had written. But in truth, Bai Lu was sitting quietly by the water, staring at the reflection of the city lights, her heart both lighter and heavier than ever before. She had finally spoken the words she had kept locked away, but she had no idea if Dylan would ever forgive her silence, or if he would ever come searching for her. For Dylan, the silence was unbearable. Every second without her felt like an echo of what he had lost, and every word in the letter reminded him that the time to act had already passed. He stood at the window, staring into the night, the weight of regret pressing heavily on his chest. He whispered her name, but only the empty room answered. The world was about to see Dylan in a way they never had before, not as the confident star who owned every screen, but as a man struggling to hold together the pieces of his heart after discovering the truth too late. Dylan could not sleep that night. The letter haunted him, each sentence repeating like a melody he could not escape. He tried to distract himself, scrolling through his phone, glancing at the endless messages piling up online, but his eyes always drifted back to the folded paper on the desk. It was no longer just a letter, it was a mirror, showing him everything he had ignored, everything he had refused to see. Shunyu stayed close, sensing the turmoil inside him. She reminded him that Bai Lu had always been patient, always quiet in her loyalty, even when no one else noticed. She spoke softly, as if afraid to break the fragile stillness, telling him that sometimes silence is louder than words, and Bai Lu's silence had been screaming for years. Dylan closed his eyes, realizing he had heard that silence all along, but he had chosen to turn away. Outside, the world was spinning faster. Fans gathered in forums, debating what the letter meant. Some believed it was a farewell, others thought it was a plea for one last chance. Clips from past dramas resurfaced, scenes where Bai Lu's gaze lingered too long, where Dylan's smile seemed too real, and the internet buzzed with theories. People claimed they had seen this truth coming all along, hidden in plain sight. But for Dylan, none of that mattered. He did not care about the gossip, the endless threads, or the storm of opinions. All he cared about was the space between them, a distance that had been created by his silence, as much as hers. He whispered to Shunyu that he could not lose her now, not after learning what she had carried alone for so long. In another part of the city, Bai Lu sat in a small cafe, her hood pulled low, trying to disappear into the quiet. She stared at her phone, tempted to call him, yet terrified of what he might say. Would he be angry at her for revealing the truth, or would he finally say the words she had always dreamed of hearing? She placed the phone down again and again, her hand trembling each time, as if the act of calling him would shatter the fragile world she had built around herself. Night bled into morning, And Dylan finally made his choice. He left the set without warning, ignoring the questions of his staff, ignoring the whispers that followed him down the hall. For the first time in years, he was not thinking of contracts or schedules, not thinking of cameras or fans, but only of her. He searched the streets, his heart racing with every step. The city felt endless, every corner a reminder of the times they had walked together in secret, every shadow a memory of the nights they had laughed away from the spotlight. He thought of the letter again, the final words that had cut him deepest, her confession that she had waited but could wait no longer. Hours passed, the sky turning from gray to gold, and just when hope began to slip from his grasp, he saw her. Bai Lu stood by the water, the same place she had always gone when the weight of the world was too heavy. Her back was turned, her figure small against the vast horizon, but Dylan knew it was her. His breath caught, his steps faltered, but then he moved forward, each stride heavy with everything left unsaid. She turned slowly, her eyes widening as she saw him standing there. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was thick with years of silence, years of missed chances, years of emotions that had been locked away. Dylan opened his mouth, but no words came. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulling out the letter, holding it tightly as if it was both a wound and a lifeline. Bai Lu's eyes filled with tears as she realized what he had in his hand. She wanted to run, to hide, but her feet refused to move. He stepped closer, his voice finally breaking through the silence, raw and trembling. He told her he had read every word, that her silence